Hi, welcome to Community Forum. I'm Karen Antonini, your host, and today I'll be making a traditional Northern Italian minestrone. This is a delicious, delicious soup handed down from my nonnas to my father and finally to me, and I'm really excited to share this with you today. So to get started, you will need a large pot like this to accommodate all the ingredients that we have today. I am trying to preheat that so we can get started. Then you'll need some zucchini, onions, celery, carrots, about a half a cup of olive oil, a little bit of butter, which we're gonna put in our pot and get it started, some northern white beans, potatoes, a little secret ingredient I'll save towards the end, some Savoy cabbage, some tomatoes I just used this from a can. I love this brand. And you want the whole tomatoes in their juice, some beef broth, and some green beans. So before I get started, I have taken my zucchini. I just want to show you because this is a little first step before. So I have these zucchini, about a pound of zucchini, and I have placed them in a large bowl of ice water. So we're going to do this for the zucchini as well as the beans. They can just be in some nice cold water like this. This is about a quarter pound of beans. It's just going to keep them really, really crisp because this soup is going to cook for about 2.5 hours, and otherwise they turn kind of mushy. So you just want to make sure that these two ingredients, there's a lot of zucchini, so stays nice and firm, and it'll soften, but it's not going to just fall apart. So that will be there for about 20 minutes. And now I'm going to go ahead. My pot is heated. I'm going to go ahead and add my olive oil. Turn it up a bit. I didn't want to burn the oil right off the bat. Get my oil going and a little bit of butter and start to add my ingredients. So most Italian dishes, or many Italian dishes, have this something called a sofrito. So this is when you're adding some onion, celery, and carrots. They're generally diced. I've already gone ahead and pre-diced this for us today. Just gonna make sure we don't wanna burn the butter. Get this going so it's nice and hot. So this sofrito, which is also like a mirepoix in French, this is the basis of many dishes. I've made, I think, a lasagna with this on the show, and we're going to do this today. So with this soup, there are different stages. So sometimes I add it all. Today, I'm going to add them in different steps, the vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and add my onions because that is nice and hot in my pan. You might hear it sizzle in a minute. So you just want to cook your onions until they're just a little bit wilted, like maybe a lightly golden or yellow color. You don't want them to burn. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit and just keep watching your pot as you go along, of course. So I've got them in there. And the steps that I'm taking today, it's generally about 2 to 3 minutes between each addition of the vegetables or the fruit. Technically, the zucchini is a fruit. So going to just give it a nice stir. And there is a little bit of chopping involved here, as you can probably see, but I just like to turn on my music that I like and chop. This is such a great dish as we head into fall and the winter months. It's delicious any time of year, but I particularly love to make this right now. So I'm going to give that another minute. And then at the end, I'm also going to show you a really nice kind of cheesy bread that goes really well with this dish. This is like a little meal in and of itself because we're adding these beans too. You don't have to add the beans if you don't like them, but it does give it the protein. But okay, this is going. Adding them will make it like a complete meal. So now I'm going to go ahead and add my carrots. I've just diced them, but roughly diced, just like this. Just make sure with each addition that you're coating that addition with the oily butter mixture so it's nicely coated, they won't burn. So I'm adding that and let that cook for a couple minutes. And This minestrone has actually been around since the 2nd century BC. This is when Rome conquered Italy and they were suddenly very prosperous and were able to bring in more kinds of foods and vegetables. So they started making this minestrone. I think they called it a minestrone craze, actually. So there are lots of different variations. This is like a Northern Italian variation, like I said, a family recipe. I used to come home and find my dad on the weekends with just coffee mugs filled with all these vegetables, and he'd already chopped and I'm using a store-bought beef broth today, but he would actually make the beef broth as well. So he was in here for a long time. I will probably show this on another show, but it's just as easy. I'm showing you a couple different techniques if you want to save some time. So here we go. Gonna add those look good. They are sizzling. I'm gonna add my celery. And it already smells so good in here. Just with these 3 ingredients just smells like cooking started. So here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna turn that up a tiny bit. Coat that, like I said, just make sure that you coat each addition with the oil. And while that's cooking, I've got my potato ready. That's up next. And then while I'm doing that, I'm going to take my green beans here. I'm just going to drain them quickly and show you. I got all of this at the farmer's market. So I've gone ahead and I have trimmed these, but if you want another step where you can take a little shortcut, because there is a lot of chopping involved, is you can buy the store-bought with the trimmed and snipped on the edges. So there's a couple little edges here, but I'm gonna go ahead and just chop these up, just dice them. You can loosely dice. Let me get that ready as it's cooking. And the key here is I just use a really sharp knife and then I put it away because I have little fingers sometimes in the kitchen, so I hide it. But it just makes the chopping go by a lot quicker. It's just a lot easier actually than trying a not as sharp of a knife. So make sure that's a great investment for your kitchen. Okay, so I am ready to add my potato before I start my green beans. There we go. So that is my salt for later. Going to go ahead and add that potato. So that will take a few minutes because it's a little bit harder, of course. Make some room here. And I'm going to coat it with the mixture. There we go. So you can experiment once you get this recipe down if you want to add something else. My nonna used to joke to my father that she had given him the ingredients but left out one, the secret. And then my father did the same to me, but I think I managed to figure it out for myself. So here we go. So you can add, depending on your tastes, but this is really a good one to have in your arsenal of soups. Okay, so I've got that going. And again, this will all soften up over time because you do cook it for a few hours. I love to make this on a weekend when I have more time and just give it a stir every half hour. So it's really the prep time and then the cooking, which doesn't take too long. And then it's just the end time, the cooking, the actual cooking part that goes by. All you need to do is just check the pot in the end. So I'm just going to cut these just kind of diced like this. They're pretty easy. Once you've trimmed them, you can get someone to help you in the kitchen. It's always nice. Come in and help you trim the edges. It's about 1/4 pound of these green beans. These are so fresh. I love going to the farmer's market and finding all these fresh ingredients like this. Zucchini is so plentiful this time of year. It's great. And there's a lot of it in this recipe, about 1 pound, 1.5 pounds. So that looks good. I'm going to give it a stir. keep my eye on the temperature. I have it about at a medium heat, so medium to high. Just want to make sure it's all getting cooked. And I love how the veggies become really, really bright. I'll show you once we throw everything in, it's just so pretty in this pot. Okay, so I'm going to add those right into my pot. No stragglers today. Okay, I'll keep this here. Give that a stir. Okay. There we go, just nicely coated. Okay. And now I'm going to take my zucchini. So you do the same thing. We're just going to drain the zucchini, and you just want to scrub it before you even put it in this bowl. You would just scrub the zucchini, make sure all, if it's especially from the farmer's market, might have a little grit on it, and just go ahead and cut that. It's pretty easy. I've diced quite a bit here for us already just to show you. Pretty easy. And you can't go wrong. Just really loosely diced, roughly diced. It's not precise. That's what I love about this recipe too. So nothing is perfect. It's always slightly different, but always tastes the same. Delicious. And this soup, if you can make it ahead of time, is actually so much better the next day. The flavors all come together. This is generally true for a lot of dishes that have ingredients like this, and they need to kind of sit and come together, all the flavors. So I'm going to add a little bit more of my zucchini here. Just a little bit more. This guy. This is so easy. I mean, a little bit of chopping, but it's worth the effort. And you can also just double this recipe. A lot of times I will do that because there is some chopping involved. So if you're going to go to the effort, you can freeze it. It freezes really well. I just tend to freeze it in individual or, couple servings, and it is really good. Just defrost and you have this amazing dish, especially as you get into the winter months. It's nice to come home to something hot, a nice hot meal. Okay, so we have just this last bit. I think that's looks like the amount we need. Put this guy over here. And then I will just add this right in to our pot. Give it a nice little stir before I add it. And add all that zucchini right in there. So zucchini is also really used widely in Italy. It was actually I was reading about it, Mesopotamia, but really cultivated in Milan. And they use it in a lot of dishes, but it's great in this soup. So you can see it's already becoming very bright and colorful in my pot. So nice. This is so healthy. You feel good eating this soup. Okay, stick this over here, make some room. So the next thing you're going to need is this Savoy cabbage. So I did make this already. I've made a pot of it because I wanted to show you the final product, and in the interest of time, because it does take a few hours, I used half of this. So if you get a normal head of Savoy cabbage, it gives you about 6 cups. So this recipe, a single serving, calls for 3 cups. This is about right. This will give you 3 cups of this cabbage. So there's also green cabbage, which is close to Savoy. Savoy is a little bit milder and a little softer. So that's what I'm using. Don't make the mistake like I did one time. I thought I'd get fancy and do a red cabbage, and it just turned the entire pot pink. And it definitely had a different taste. So I didn't tell anyone, but I'm telling you now. So you can go ahead. I've just removed that core, and we're just going to shred this and add it right into the pot. There we go. So just shred. And I've already taken off the outer leaf of it, but when you buy it, you might want to remove the outer leaf. It will look maybe kind of like the shipping petals on a rose. You might want to remove the outer the outer petals sometimes if it's looking a little bit tired or dirty, especially when you're cooking. Very important. So here we go. It is nicely shredded. Wow, see, that makes a lot of cabbage. Doesn't look like it. I used to overbuy going to get my cabbage, but now I know this yields a lot. So, okay, so this is shredded. And I'm just gonna go ahead, give this a stir, and then turn it down a fraction, add my cabbage right in there. Make sure that's right over the heat. Okay. There we go. Okay, so stick my room over here, and I'm just going to let this now cook for about 5 to 6 minutes. You want to get this just blended, adjust your heat if you need to so it's not sticking or burning. There we go. Just make sure you get it all nicely coated. And there we go. So I'm gonna let that sit there for about 5 minutes till it gets soft. You'll see, depends. Kind of turns a little nice bright green. There we go. And I'm gonna let that sit there. So at this point, because we're waiting a few minutes, I am going to show you the cheesy bread that I'm gonna make. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this over. A lot of things here to show you today. So I have some Parmesan cheese. We're also gonna add some Parmesan to this soup. At the very end, you add about a half a cup. After the 2 hours or 2.5 hours, towards the very end, just add your Parmesan. Make sure to reserve some. Always use the fresh Parmesan like this, freshly grated. Don't grate ahead of time or it'll get dried out. And in this case, for this bread, I am going to also use a Gruyere. This is a Swiss cheese, and it's got a really nice kind of nutty, it's a little tang to it, which is great with the Parmesan. So I'm going to make some space here. I'm using this kind of bread, just the Tuscan pane or ciabatta, something that isn't going to fall apart too much. So I got this also at the farmer's market, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to want to toast that. I've turned on my broiler because it's going to broil for a few minutes. So I have a little bit of butter. I'm going to put this right in my bowl here. You can see. I'll hide my secret ingredient for now and show you. I'm going to add my butter and then go ahead and grate this cheese. So I've got my Parmesan, and depending on how much of this cheesy bread you're making, you can do a cup. I've already gone ahead and toasted some of that bread. I'm going to bring it over in a minute. And so maybe I'll do a cup or so. I love cheese, so I can always do more. It's really just depending on how much you want. I'll just show you to give you an idea of what this looks like. This is just such a great thing to serve along with the soup. My kids love this. So there, I've got about a cup of my Parmesan. I'm gonna add this right into my bowl. Kids and adults, by the way. And then the Gruyere. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do, the same thing on the right side, the actual grater, and grate. So this is a really nice combination, this Parmesan Gruyere. It's really good flavor. I was tempting to make it without the butter. It just doesn't bind as well on top of the bread. If you maybe drizzle a little olive oil on top of the bread and added it, if you don't want to use the butter, but it just makes it all come together and it's delicious, just a little bit. After all, we're eating so many veggies in that pot. So I'm actually going to give my pot a little stir once I'm finished here. And almost done. Reserve that Parmesan. I'm going to keep that rind. I'm going to show you why. Some of you might know this little trick. So I'm going to add that right into my bowl. Also going to give this a stir. So always have to keep an eye on this pot. Make sure it looks great. Looks really good. And by the time I get that bread in there, I'm going to show you it's going to be ready to add the remaining ingredients. Okay, give that a few minutes. So I'm just going to take this. I use a fork because it's easier to kind of crumble with the butter and the cheeses. It tends to kind of, it's a little bit of a sticky mess here, but it's well worth it. And kind of gets through there as opposed to a spoon, which will just kind of clump up. So you're just going to have your pre-softened or your softened butter. Just let it sit out. And then mix it all together like this. And then get your bread. So I've taken this toasted this bread, and I'm going to put it on this to make some more room here. Put it right on my pan. I've taken this, just toast it till it's nicely golden so it keeps that crisp. Otherwise, if you put it right in the oven on that bread, it's going to get kind of just soggy and or just not as toasty and nice. So I'm going to go ahead and add, see how much I have here. Just do a few of these. I have time to show you the rest of the soup. And then you're just going to add a little bit onto each of your toasts, just like this. It's a little bit of a mess, but it's so good. And I have lined my pan with the foil because I don't like to clean up the cheese right off of the pan. It's a little messy. You can use parchment paper, parchment or the foil. Go ahead, you can just use your fingers, get it right on there, and then stick it under your broiler for a few minutes. You just need to check on it so it doesn't burn, of course. And let's see, I got it. All right, so I'm going to do that at the end. Let's see, I will do that right now. Just remember to take that out. There we go. I could use my other piece, but I'll do that later for my soup lunch. So I'm going to put this right in my oven. And just wait a few minutes. So now I'm going to give my pot another stir, and then I'm going to go ahead and add my broth. So because I'm using a store-bought broth, I'm going to dilute it so it does not too salty and not too pungent with the flavor. I'm using a beef broth, so I have 2 cups. Just pour it right in there, and then 4 cups of water as well. I'm gonna add that right into my pot. Add all of that and give it a stir, of course. So this recipe, you do need to salt it at the end, but I would suggest just don't do it now. Maybe add a little bit. I always add a little, but depending on what kind of beef broth you're using, it can get a little bit salty. So not too salty, but if you add too much extra, it could taste salty. So, and then again, it might not. So you just taste it at the end, add some salt. I wanted to show you actually something that I love is Jane salt. This is something that it just has a really nice blend at the end when I serve the soup. Something I discovered, actually my family used it or uses it. It's really good when you go to add the Parmesan and the salt. So, okay, now I'm going to open up my can. I need one of these cups. So I need just 2/3 cup of my whole tomatoes. And let's see, grab a little spoon for this. And you want to add them with their juices. So try not to make a huge mess here. Let's see, get a spoon, little spoon. Okay, so just add, let's see, it's about a half a can. I do this a lot, so I'm not even going to measure this. You do add some of the juice in there, the whole tomato. It will break up as you cook. So there we go. You just don't want your soup to get watery. You can always add a little bit of water if you need to, or the broth. And at this point, I'm just going to give it a stir. And then my secret ingredient, which, as I said, some of you might know this, in a lot of Italian cooking, is to add this Parmesan rind. So this really gives it this secret, this extra flavor that is delicious. I actually keep these when I finish some Parmesan from grating. I put them in a Ziploc baggie and I keep them in the freezer. And whenever I'm making a soup or another, maybe just soups, I guess, I add it. So I'm going to stick it right in there. And then, of course, you'll remove them when you're finished. But in our family, everyone searches for this rind because at the very end, after 2.5 hours, it comes out and you can actually just take the extra cheese right off of there. If you're a total foodie and a Parmesan lover, it's delicious. So that is good for now. Add a tiny bit of the salt, maybe like 1 teaspoon or so. Give it a stir. And then I'm just going to cover it and turn it to a low simmer for, I'm going to check my toast, a couple hours, like I said. So you can keep it just off like this. Check on my toast. Hopefully it hasn't burned. Nope, looks good. So here is my toast. Looks great. You can see this. I'm going to take a piece to show you. And this is perfect with, let's see, I don't have a plate. That's okay. Let's pick it up. It's a little hot. A little bit hot. I'll put it in my bowl to show you. So it's just melted. It is so delicious, really hot. And then I'm going to show you, I've made this soup, like I said. I'm just going to show you the end product here. This is ready. This is ready to go. I'm just going to ladle it in, add a little Parmesan, and I'm going to have an amazing lunch. So I hope you get to try this recipe. It is so good. Like I said, you can make it, freeze it, and you will be very happy. So I will see you next time. Thank you.